Okay, so for this, I'm going to just show how to set up a Punnett square based on a very standard word problem that you would see on a high school biology exam. Um, so our question is, let's move this out of the way here. Um, in pea plants, the color of the flower is determined by a gene labeled F. A pink flower, big F, is dominant over a white flower, little f. A homozygous pink flowered plant is crossed with a white flowered plant. What are the genotypes and phenotypes of the offspring? So, given the information from the word problem, we see that the pink is the dominant color and the white is the recessive. We know this because, one, it says pink flower is dominant, and it also indicates to us that the pink flower and the color pink of the flower, I should say, is determined by a capital F allele. And we know that capital letters always indicate dominant and lowercase letters always indicate recessive. So right off the bat, we're given the information about the allele in general. But for this specific problem, we're looking at a homozygous pink flowered plant and a white flowered plant. And if you recall from the vocabulary from this section, in order for any recessive allele to be the presenting trait, it has to be homozygous recessive. And again, homozygous versus heterozygous. Homozygous just means that both of the alleles are the same letter, and the same type of letter, I should say. So a homozygous recessive would indicate two little f alleles. And in this case, we're also looking at a homozygous pink flowered plant. So we would say this is a big F, big F. So this indicates our pink flowered plant is being crossed with a little f plant. And so now to determine what the genotypes and phenotypes of the offspring, we have to complete the Punnett square. So to complete a Punnett square, you simply are taking one letter from each side of the box and dragging it into the box. So for this example, it's pretty simple because you only are going to end up with one type of genotype for all four offspring, but you would drag this down and you would drag this over to give us big F, little f. And when writing out genotypes, if there is a dominant allele, you always put the dominant or the capital letter first. That's just a standard rule of thumb that you should follow. It also helps keep things aligned. If you do Punnett squares with more than one trait, sometimes you do Punnett squares with 2, 3, 4 different traits. So it's much simpler and much easier to keep track of them when you have the dominant allele first. So then, if we're going to do the same thing over here, you bring this information down and you bring this information over. So this offspring would also be big F, little f. And then these down here, you're going to bring this big F down and this little f over to give you big F, little f, big F, little f. Now, we just said that having two of the same alleles would indicate a homozygous offspring or individual. When you have one of each allele, that's what gives you the heterozygous offspring or individual. So for our genotypes from the question, to answer the question, our genotypes would simply be 4 out of 4, or to put that in percent, that would give us 100% of the offspring are going to be big F, little f. Now, if we remember, the genotype is always indicative of the genetics behind the allele. That's what's going to give us the genetic information. Where phenotype, you can remember it as the physical description or the physical trait that you see of the allele. So in this case, our phenotype is going to be what? The color of the plant. So if we remember from dominant compared to recessive, the only way for a recessive trait, in this case it's going to be the white color, to be present is if we have this homozygous recessive. Do you see any homozygous recessive on our Punnett square? No. So that would mean 100% of our offspring, because we just calculated that there's only one genotype with our Punnett square, 100% of the offspring are going to be pink. And so those are our two answers to the questions of what's the genotypes and phenotypes of the offspring.